PS5 sales just surged. Not slightly, not gradually, exploded. In fact, for a brief moment in 2026, the PlayStation 5 had its biggest sales spike of the entire year. But here's the twist. It had nothing to do with a new game, nothing to do with new features, and nothing to do with hype. So, why are people suddenly rushing to buy a 6-year-old console? This is where things get interesting. Welcome back to Game Pulse. On this channel, we don't just talk about games, we break down what's actually happening behind the industry. And right now, Sony just pulled off something that looks like a massive win, but it might actually reveal something much deeper. Let's get straight to it. Late March into early April 2026, PS5 sales didn't just go up, they spiked. We're talking about a sudden jump so big that it became the strongest sales week of the entire year. In some regions, sales nearly doubled week over week. That's insane, especially for a console that launched back in 2020. Normally, by this point in a console's lifecycle, sales slow down, interest fades, and people start waiting for the next generation. But that's not what happened here. Instead, people rushed in, fast, almost like they were trying to beat a deadline. And that's exactly what they were doing. Because this wasn't hype buying. This was panic buying. Sony announced a global price increase, and not a small one. The PS5 suddenly became significantly more expensive across multiple regions. And the moment that news dropped, people reacted instantly. They didn't wait, they didn't think, they bought. Because psychologically, when people feel like something is about to get more expensive, they act fast, even if they weren't planning to buy it before. This is called urgency pressure, and it's powerful. It's the same reason limited time offer works. Last few items left works. Price increasing soon works. Because humans hate losing more than they love gaining. So instead of thinking, do I need a PS5? They think, if I don't buy now, I'll regret it later. And that single shift is enough to trigger millions in sales. But here's where things get really interesting. Because this surge tells us something important. Even in 2026, even after years on the market, even with no major new release driving it, people still want the PS5. That demand never disappeared. It was just waiting. And this is where Sony is playing a completely different game compared to the rest of the industry. Right now, a lot of companies are struggling. Games are launching broken. Updates are rushed. Trust is dropping. But Sony? They've built something very different. A platform people still believe in. And that matters more than hype. But here's the part nobody is talking about. This surge might actually be a warning sign. Because when sales spike due to price increases, it doesn't always mean growth. Sometimes it means the opposite. What we're seeing right now is something called demand shifting. People who are going to buy later bought early, which means future sales might actually slow down because those buyers are already gone. Think about it like this. If 100 people were planning to buy a PS5 over the next 6 months, and 60 of them rush to buy it today, that creates a massive spike. But it also creates a gap later. And companies know this. So the real question is, did Sony just benefit from this situation, or did they plan for it? Because timing a price increase like this, right before major upcoming releases, is not random. We're entering a phase where big games are coming, next-gen expectations are rising, and players are deciding, do I upgrade now or wait? And Sony just forced that decision. But wait, there's another side to this story, and it's happening outside official stores. The secondhand PS5 market is exploding. Demand for used consoles has skyrocketed. Why? Because not everyone is willing to pay the new prices. So instead, they're looking for alternatives, cheaper options, better deals. And this creates a split market. On one side, people rushing to buy new before prices rise. On the other, people hunting for used deals after prices rise. Either way, demand stays high. But behavior changes. And this is the real story. Not just that PS5 sales increased, but how they increased. Because it reveals something about modern gaming consumers. They're not just reacting to games anymore. They're reacting to economics, prices, value, timing. Gaming is no longer just entertainment. It's becoming a financial decision. And if that sounds dramatic, just wait until you see what this means for the future of consoles. Because if price increases can trigger this kind of surge, what happens when the next generation launches? Will people rush again, or will they hesitate? Because this time, things are different. Players are more aware, more cautious, more selective, and that changes everything. So when you hear PS5 sales are booming, that's true, but it's only half the story. This isn't just a success story, it's a signal that demand is still strong but also sensitive, a signal that players still want PlayStation but are watching their wallets more than ever, and a signal that the gaming industry is quietly changing. Because sometimes the biggest spikes don't come from excitement, they come from pressure. If you enjoyed this kind of breakdown, subscribe to Game Pulse, because we don't just follow the industry, we decode it. And trust me, this is only the beginning.